Welcome to another episode of Mindful Drawing. This week, we'll explore the scalar relationship between figures. Often a good practice in working through a design idea is to test it at many scales. Can something work very small and very large? Where does it find its nice middle fit? And what possibilities do you see when you change the relative position of something with its neighbor? Does it challenge your preconception or open up new ideas? To do this, we'll work through a warm-up to establish what you want to draw with, what strikes your fancy for today, what feels good in the hand and the motion of the body. We'll use that to establish our breath, set up the canvas of the page, define a few starting arbitrary relationships, and then work through them with the large, the small, the medium, and anything in between that we can use to explore potential composition, potential figuration, and some emergence of a little world on the page through your active technique. This is an exercise in mindfulness, so there'll be many opportunities to take stock and establish our place and ourselves, to disconnect a little bit from configuration or intentional action, to open up and see where things may go, to bring awareness to what we find. If at any time you feel discomfort, whether that's fatigue in the hand from drawing or trying to match some pre-configured idea of what the shape should be, we'll enter into that practice of the breath, slow things down, give ourselves some space to relax. That opens up that territory to move forward to the creative vision. All you need is a pen or pencil. I think I'll use a little bit of both today. A pad of paper or sketchbook, something to draw on, and a nice space where you can devote 20 to 30 minutes to a meditation through drawing. Go ahead and gather your supplies, establish your space, and let's draw together. So we'll work with simple shape, play a little in the warm-up of what that shape might be for you. It could be anything from a square somewhere on a little piece of scrap paper or in your sketchbook, triangle, circle, squiggly thing, anything you kind of want to play around with. So maybe take a little time to explore some shapes in their regular or irregular conditions, curves or edges, finding something that's relatively simple to construct so it doesn't get in the way or become too frustrating if the edges are hard to bring together. But even a square can be quite complex over time. And after you find something you're drawn to there in the shape language, whatever size you've been drawing at, let's call that something in the medium range, the in-between and the normal, and draw a few of the same thing that are very small, significantly sized relative to that medium range. Little twinkles. They can populate more quickly, more densely in a given space, but lose some of the resolution or shape forming context, space forming context there. And then similarly, from the very small, what is the very large? Something that may have to cross through on this warm-up sheet. As we work with the larger or longer form drawing, you might have a little more room to maneuver. But now just establishing the difference in how it may feel to draw from the very small to the very large around the same general shape. And for the last couple, any size you like, bring some attention to the way you form your shape. Is it continuous around the object? For the square here, and the few I've drawn, I find the little kind of reflected double L shape to offer me a nice smooth interface. But whatever feels good in terms of drawing for yourself, we'll work with that one so it stays out of the way of the mind to let us play in a field of many scales. And as we transition here, it might help to start by establishing the blank page with a little composition by just working at the larger size that you were practicing on. Do a few of those with a bit of slowness. As they're larger, we can connect our breath to each line of the shape. So breathing in to find a position to begin. And on the out breath, just one side or edge or portion of the shape. As you reach the end of that line, that determines perhaps the size of large here. Breathing in again and starting in a new trajectory. And at your pace, in when you reach the end of a segment, and out as you draw the new one, working around the sides of your shape. And do a few of those at the larger scale, beginning to open up the mind's awareness, bring back in the way of forming that shape. Finding a rhythm, perhaps one side or one segment at a time. And these can fill the page, overlap, stay separate, anything that feels right in the moment of starting the position. Perhaps even closing the eyes to locate the beginning of a new figure, and then drawing it where it may lie on the page. But if you get 3 or 4 larger shapes, that's enough to start to establish some relationship of their position, internal space with the external space around. You can always come back and add larger ones again, but I think we'll transition and take a little pass at finding gaps, finding alignments, and working with a more medium-sized shape. In this case, with our breathing, it may be more comfortable to do half or even all of the shape at one time. For my double L, I find an in-breath on one leg and exhalation on another. A nice even rhythm, not forcing too much breath in, not waiting for the exhale to finish. But that may be different for what you're drawing and how you're drawing. Take a few of these shapes just to find that balance and rhythm. Things within the drawing may guide the eye depending on how you see, hear alignments to edges, or perhaps filling out some of the in-between spaces. Or again, if it's hard in any way to find a position, choose the next motion. At any time, you can just close the eyes, find a place, and follow the breath and the movement of the pen or pencil into your shape. Well, again, we start to get some density, and the more of these that play around on the page, the tighter it'll become, and the more our eyes have to figure a place for the new figure. So we can now move to finding areas for the very small, speeding up the time it takes to make the shape, or really slowing down the fineness of our motion to that same rhythm of the breathing. The small potentially gathering in clusters or scattering around, something to explore. As you find the rhythm connection between the breath and the motion there, it can be easy with something quick to draw to quicken our breath and our pace, or even hold it in as our motion and actions take over. Try to find something that brings that rejuvenation of the in-breath and the out-breath into your presence. And keeps the drawing moving at a nice, even pace. Once you find that rhythm, whether it's through sequences, repetition of the shape, or just placing them around, scattered through the page, the entering into the awareness of our breath, the connection of that to our action, and allow us to begin to play more freely across the canvas. Perhaps testing new organizations, or again, taking that moment to close the eyes, let the pen or pencil find the place and follow through the technique. And after you've drawn several of these in the small category, you begin to pick and choose, oscillate between these. Perhaps on mine have a consistency in their large, medium, and small range, but there's plenty of things in between a larger, medium, a smaller, small. And each of these can become accessible through that space we've established. They might start to overlap, intersect, play in the space of each other, further defining and opening up that relationship of our simple figure to the multiplicity of grounds forming, some within, some without and around. And now it's just a game of finding place and establishing size relative to what you may see around, or the current pacing of your breath. As you begin to find new conditions of edge, of center, of alignment, or misalignment, without over-directing or overthinking. Our eye always a bit of a guide, and if you find it overpowering, try trying to parse out what the right move is. We just close it for a little bit. Maybe an image of the drawing remains in the mind a little bit softer and fuzzier, and find place somewhere in that to begin again. Disrupting composition or configuration, allowing for some space of the spontaneous as we explore here just the changing of size of a similar item, establishing and filling out a bit of space next to, between, on top of, along and around. And if you begin to notice yourself working in one particular area for a while, say inside of the large shapes or in a corner area of the drawing, take a few breaths as you work there and use those breaths to find another location somewhere unexplored to move to for a little while, just to break up any loops that might be forming for a little bit, to allow more of the page to develop before we enter some time to explore with our imagination what we might find here. And if it begins to get very dense and full in the sense of the page, we can always shrink way down to a very, very, very small for a few moments. Really slow it down and bring the attention into the crispness of forming that shape. Could even begin to explore overlap if you're interested. Just a few more repetitions with the flexibility of a shifting scale. And a good constellation or cloud of these elements is filling out some of the territory here. And now we can let our eyes travel over and along, let maybe the mind's visual pattern matching suggest things we might see, places we might guide or inhabit in the drawing. We don't have to find anything. It may just look like a smattering of squares or circles or whatever shape you're working with. And what we can look for is emphasis and connection. Giving a shape a new boundary, using kind of an offset to connect and perhaps fold in or wrap in other shapes. Let's start with the large, as they're easy to enter, a lot of space to work with. And just give them a little thickening of the perimeter. Those double lines bringing greater visual depth for a moment on the page. having different weight or influence depending on the size of the shape we're working with. In this new line, separated from the direct technique, can meander a bit more, confined, new connections of space, figurations, from what we allowed to emerge there on the page. And as you explore this outward world formed here, can you also keep some attention inward to the breath? Are you holding anything tight there? Is it still flowing at a gentle, even pace, supported by the early work of bringing oxygenation to the bloodstream? And whatever you notice, recognize it, tight or loose, fast or slow. And give it just a gentle guidance back in connection with what you may be drawing. Breathing in to find position and out through action. Breathing in with a direction and out to redirect. Finding that interface for yourself on the page. And we have quite a few lines here, shapes and spaces between them. Feel free to begin exploring within, perhaps connecting paths. Continuing the play of offsets or finding relationships between neighbors. We'll take some time, in 5 minutes or so, just to have that place of wandering through what we've provided for our imagination here. I've worked through the line for a while. I see some figures stand out for my eyes. You can move to shading or hatching or filling in. Feel free to stick with lines and the contouring. Anything that begins to find emergent figures, new shapes, things that reach out to your eyes, something recognizable in the space of the drawing. And if you bring your memory back to the beginning of the exercise, blank canvas, the page empty, just the fibers of the paper, the subtle color and tone variations of the light there. What do you remember from that moment of starting in the journey of drawing shapes, of forming relationships of simple figures to this complex arrangement, a series of new relationships that didn't exist before starting here. What do you see now from that beginning of emptiness, reaching down into that void of the canvas and allowing the breath, the movement of the hand, and the leaning on of a simple technique to create something there. An expression of the moment experienced one at a time, accumulated into a diverse array of size, configuration, proximity, and adjacency, filling in the space there of the page, making your own little world for a little while. And a few more minutes that we can spend there and recognizing the time and space we've given to ourselves to experiment, explore, maybe create something interesting, maybe just practice moving our hand around and breathing at an even pace. Whatever it may be that you find in the exercise, having some gratitude for yourself or taking the time to explore. Whatever kind of element you're on now, working through, filling in light and dark, or completing a few circuits connecting the little objects around the page. Take this current one as one you'll finalize the exercise with, knowing you can always come back or continue on, but using this to begin to bring an end to this moment. Not rushing through, we have a minute or two, but completing it with presence. Letting it be closure to the exercise and releasing the unfinished to the continuous space of this act of drawing. Thank you for joining along in the exercise. I hope you found it enjoyable. Hopefully something creative came out of it, and perhaps just a space of relaxation and retuning for your day or evening, wherever you may be. If you like these exercises, I put up new ones pretty much every Wednesday morning, so feel free to subscribe to the channel. Give it a thumbs up if you liked this one, and share in the comments what you discovered during your own practice. I'd be happy if you share with your friends and bring more people into an act of meditation through drawing, as these exercises bring me a nice creative outlet each week. Thinking through new ways of exploring drawing in a short format like this is invigorating and always fun to review through the process of making the video. And I'd love to hear how that influences or affects you, where it might carry out through your day, or just give you that nice private space and time for yourself to explore your own creativity. Wherever you're at or whatever you're doing for the rest of the day or evening, I hope this brings a little creativity into that and a little space where you can observe and keep calm and find ways through and connections around. Scale is a powerful tool in thinking through design, but also in contemplating the very large and the very small, playing with the roles, transforming the severity of situations, bringing light to details, and reducing our worry about the difficult things. This is Rooks is Fun, signing off. Draw well. Thank you. circuits, buildings, events, pathways, recording past things or predicting future occurrences. Who knows what we find here in our act of creative expression, experimentation.